What's up guys, Joker here. Today we have got the two mid-range heavy hitters that are out right now, the NVIDIA GTX 1060 as well as the AMD RX 480, and that's an 8GB model on the AMD RX 480 that I have, and the GTX 1060, as you guys I'm sure are familiar, does have 6GB of video memory on there. And today we're going to be focusing specifically on DirectX 12 and Vulkan testing. I am going to be doing a separate video where I, really compare these two cards side by side with the acoustics, noise levels, and DX11 testing and stuff like that. So if you guys have any suggestions for any games you want me to test in that video that I'm going to be following up with in a couple of days, then let me know down in the comments below, and also make sure that you are subscribed for that video. But as I said, in this video we are going to be taking a look at DX12 and Vulkan, because a lot of the comments that I was seeing over on Twitter and in my comment section after the launch of the 1060 is that there wasn't enough testing on low-level API type of benchmarks, and that's what a lot of people are curious to see for kind of like the future of PC gaming, because it seems like that is going to be the direction that we're going and getting away from DX11 titles. So it is nice to kind of look forward to the future and see what we could expect later on down the road. So now we're going to go ahead and take a look at the rockin' benchmarks for the DX12 and Vulkan titles that I was able to test here in this video, and I was testing in my mini ITX system with 16GB of RAM, and I've got the i5 6600K in there overclocked to 4.9 GHz at 1.35 volts, and that's underwater and everything like that. We did all of our testing in there. I felt like it was a kind of a good gauge, as I felt maybe a lot of people that going out and buying something like an RX 480 or a GTX 1060, those sub $300 cards, would probably be looking to maybe run something like an i5, so I felt like this would give us a good real-world testing scenario. But without further ado, let's go ahead and kick it off with those rockin' benchmarks. So we got to look at the numbers there for DX12 and Vulkan with the RX 480 and the GTX 1060, which are really the numbers that I wanted to see more than anything, because I'm just curious to see where these cards are going to go in the future and how that's going to continue to be developed for with new APIs like DirectX 12 and Vulkan, which I personally hope Vulkan gets pushed a lot further, being that it is backwards compatible for operating systems and also can be supported over on Linux. So I think Vulkan would be better really for everyone involved if we can kind of go in that direction. And we saw the massive surge in performance that Doom was able to get with the Vulkan API being implemented over OpenGL. Seeing there in 1440p, it's getting 83 FPS, and sometimes I was seeing in the 90s and hundreds on that game. Running over Vulkan on the RX 480, it just absolutely crushes that game. And we see that the GTX 1060 there in 1440, the averages was 64 FPS versus the 83 of the RX 480. So it just got an absolute mud hole stomped into it by the RX 480, because I feel that they are taking much better advantage of the parallel rendering and the async compute available in a title like Doom when it is optimized and made correctly. And they AMD wound up taking 6 out of the 10 games that we tested here, so they did take the majority. The ones that NVIDIA did win out on are Rise of the Tomb Raider, the Talos Principle Vulkan benchmark, which is in beta. That benchmark, the Vulkan support on that game is in beta right now, so it's not really finalized and hasn't been optimized completely for yet. So that's something that should be noted. Also, the 3D Mark API test, I ran through that. It's a low overhead API test, which tests on the different APIs. It goes through DX11 and DX12, and we focused on the DX12 numbers here. NVIDIA won in the DX12 with 17.5 million to the 16.9 million of the RX 480, so that is fairly close in the relative terms of that benchmark right there, but NVIDIA did win out there. And when I did test that in DX11, you didn't see it there on the charts, but NVIDIA won quite handily in DX11, and we're going to be following that up with a full DX11 benchmarking video pretty soon. AMD, they took Ashes of the Singularity down pretty close. It's pretty close score between those two, but they did win it out. And then also the Time Spy benchmark. So AMD did just edge them out there, only by about 50 points over the GTX 1060. And, there was a lot of controversy around that, and I saw that PC Perspective did post, they did an interview, I believe, with people from FutureMark talking about that, so I'm going to check out that video, which seems pretty interesting, but I know there was some controversy around the Time Spy benchmark, but I wanted to include it because it's new and it's, DX12 and people are talking about it, so I wanted to include that benchmark here for you guys, so I'm going to go ahead and get on out of here. Oh, and also the Unreal Engine 4 Elemental benchmark, in case people were curious about what that is, that's just the Unreal Engine 4 demo/benchmark that you can actually download. If you want to check it out, I'll put a link to it down in the description below. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here, guys. I'm going to go back to benchmarking and testing for DX11 and comparing these cards side by side, even though, it's been kind of done by a lot of the channels out there. I want to do my own final testing, and so I can kind of give you guys a recommendation in case you're out there, wondering, should I go for the GTX 1060 or the RX 480? And we'll follow up that, in a future video pretty soon coming up, and yeah, I'll catch you guys next time. Ta-ra.